Hi, this is Lorraine, and I've been guided to create another video. If you'll give me a minute to clear, center, and balance my energy, we'll get started. In this video, I have been guided just to review the different objects that have come into our solar system or into Earth's space, and how I interpreted those objects, as well as discussing the importance of, or the ceremonial importance of first contact. And there are some very strong visions that I've had that I'll also share with you. So first we had 3i Atlas come in, which was the primer, the terraformer, the greeter. And it came in, exchanged information with our sun as well as Mother Earth. And its obligation is to clear all the energy, all the space within the atmosphere of Earth. It's also working that same obligation throughout our solar system, but its primary focus is Earth. So it's dropping or sharing or putting forward that AI technology, which is connected to particles, and it's projecting them through the sun and onto Earth. That's the most powerful projection, was when it passed behind the sun, or what appeared to be behind the sun, and projected those objects through the sun. One of the big paradigms, belief systems, or blocks that we need to get past is that we perceive certain things are possible and impossible. What's happening right now is technology beyond anything we can comprehend. So what many people believe can't possibly survive the sun, couldn't possibly survive moving through the different outer layers of our atmosphere into our space here on Earth, is untrue. Just because you don't believe it's possible doesn't mean it's impossible. And so there are many interventions that are taking place that have been instigated or have started at 3i Atlas's movement through our solar system and pass by Earth. Perihelion, and that pass very close to Earth, and I know there's a term for it, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But those incidences are very profound, but 3i Atlas is communicating and exchanging information with Earth and with the sun as it came in and as it passed through. That's very important. The next thing was C2025 V1 Borisov. That was a new anomalous object that showed up in November of 2025. And what came in very strong was something that was put in place to block the interaction or communication between 3i Atlas and Earth. And then it disappeared. And so what came in very strong was that C2025 V1 Borisov was like a caveman throwing a rock. Like whatever body organization projected that to block 3i Atlas, its technology was that equal to a caveman in relationship to 3i Atlas. It wasn't going to do any damage. And so that's the second thing. Third was C2014 UN271 Bernardinelli-Bernstein, and that came in as the cosmic sweeper. Anything that 3i Atlas has done to help clear the planet, clear our water, clear our oceans, clear every part of our planet to prepare it for first contact, anything that's remnant, that's left behind, Bernardinelli-Bernstein is going to remove. 3i Atlas is on the same ecliptic plane as the planets in our solar system. Bernardinelli-Bernstein is on a different cycle, and so it is coming below Earth. So it's not on our ecliptic plane. It's moving beneath the planets in our solar system. So as it moves through our solar system, it is like picking up the remnants of what's being left behind, or what's dropping off the planets as a whole. You can see that as a metaphor, as something literal, but there are many forces at play. And it's not literally a cosmic sweeper, but electricity, the magnetic field, all these things that are well outside my scope of expertise, but all interact and engage one another, are working together to create this transition. And it's very important to understand it's not any one thing. There are many things happening right now on many levels. And then there's Asteroid 2025 PN7, which is a staging area and the observatory. It's a staging area for first contact, and it's observatory for these beings that are coming in as ambassadors for first contact to observe what's going on Earth, as well as to aid in any type of intervention that's necessary to protect the integrity of Mother Earth. So there are many things happening right now. There is once again going to be a bit of a lull between now and March perigove, which is when 3i Atlas meets its closest point to Jupiter. But these things are very important to review. That's what came through very strong. These things are very important to review. The other thing that came in this week was this first contact, this ambassador that's coming through. I feel very strongly that this ambassador is an amphibious being, and I got much more information about him visually, but what came through most important was the ceremonial component of this first contact. And so clothing, there's always a tunic with a robe over it, a vest, and I've had a number of visions, and I'll do picture in picture to show you, but well, this one's from October 8th of last year, and this is when Zayco came in, and I did discuss this in another video. I'll put the link in the description, but he was wearing a light blue tunic with a white gown underneath. So he had the white gown underneath with this tunic. It was like a vest, a long vest that went down to the floor. I had the exact same vision this would be in January 12th, 2019. White gown, baby blue overlay, and I'll do a picture in picture right here. But this was me. I was wearing a white gown with a baby blue overlay, that vest that came all the way down to the floor. I had a gold crown on, and I was carrying a gold staff. And the message that came through is, you must first see and know who you are to become that person. Everything in divine right time. And so when I was reviewing this information, what came through is the ceremonial component of the clothing has nothing to do with value, monetary value, anything like that. So to be wearing a crown doesn't mean anything like it would on Earth. So on Earth, you have these opulent crowns with all these jewels in them, so on and so forth, to show wealth and power. When these beings come together in their ceremonial garb, it's to honor and reflect their culture, their people, and their way of life. The crown was explained to me, or the headdress what they wear on their head was expressed or shown or explained to me to be something to demonstrate the experience this person has, not only with working with their own culture, but in being an ambassador and engaging with other planets, other worlds. And it made it likened it to the Native American headdress, where one feather was a younger, less experienced native, and the full headdress was worn by someone who was extremely experienced, a chief, for example, or an elder in a tribe. And very much the same way. So other than the value of the work that's put into that Native American headdress, the feathers themselves don't have a monetary value, right? It's a value of the quality of the person that is wearing that headdress. That's what's being expressed in that headdress. The same way with these ceremonial first contact engagements with other worlds, the headdress, what they're wearing on their head, is an expression of that person's experience on that world, within that culture, as well as with other worlds, other outer worldly beings, extra dimensional beings, alien beings, beings of love and light is how I want to call them, or what I choose to call them, but not everybody might relate to that term or that phrase. But the clothing was very important, and what they wear on the head and the staff also was very important. I put some color in the drawing I did, but I did it mostly because the color, he didn't have the same clothing. So I saw very much the gown and the tunic on many, many beings in many worlds over the last few years. But this being had a light, it was a light blue, almost a silver, but it had a blue tone to it, hat and gown. And I felt very strongly that there is something important about the color blue when engaging in these the color blue is important when they are engaging each other in this formal ceremonial circumstance. The last thing I'm going to say is in my experience, there are several ways beings have come in the last 10 years into my space. One is to create fear, anxiety, to intimidate, right? To get me to try to shut down and shut out my intuitive side. The other way is to observe. So I've had many beings come into my space and observe me. I've seen them physically in my space. And third is formal greetings. So the formal greetings have always been, where we're wearing ceremonial garb, have always been intuitive. They've always been through telepathic communication, and I guess astral traveling. Okay, I never really saw it this way because I didn't feel it was important to create these categories. What was important is the exchange and how we relate to one another, how we engage one another, the respect and honoring of the person. But also what I received was an incredible amount of compassion for what I'd been through. Because in the beginning, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I still had a lot of trauma I was working through. So I still had some unbalanced energy within me, which I still have a little bit, but I'm much better now than I was 7 years ago. But nevertheless, they would have to walk into that space and have to deal with my internal struggle. So when I first started having these engagements, it wasn't a physical struggle so much as an internal battle that I was dealing with. And so as we move forward, we will still have these telepathic astral traveling engagements, but they will eventually, and this is setting the groundwork for the physical interaction. The other thing, the last thing I wanted to say was when I was, this whole week, I was very much connected to this amphibious being, and I was looking very much at him. So he was showing me like so he didn't actually show me. Whenever I meet beings from other worlds, I'm always incredibly fascinated by what they look like and how they engage, how they breathe, what's appropriate and inappropriate. And what's appropriate touching and inappropriate touching, to be quite honest, because I'm so fascinated with how they look. I didn't know if, for example, I didn't know if these lines on his face were like a variation on some type of a gill, because he is an amphibious being. And they're not, they're just layers on his face. But he showed me his hands. His hands had a thin layer of film around the outside, and then little, I shouldn't keep closing this. These little circles around the outside, I didn't do a good job, but there's little circles around the outer edge. And this is a very thin film that goes around. It's almost like a web, but it's thinner than this. It's translucent, and it goes around his thumb, and it has little suction cups on it. And then on the back of his hand, it was very much like a frog has like bumps, but it was not, there weren't as many. There were just a few bumps on the back of his hand. And so often when I meet these beings, I'm very fascinated. I ask them if I can touch their face. I ask them if I can touch their hands. And I'll ask questions about, or where I can touch, if is it okay if I touch things, because to me, they're all exceptionally beautiful beings. Even if they don't look like me, if they look completely different and maybe even a little bit scary, I find them incredibly, it's fascinating. I'm like a toddler that sees something for the first time. It's like sparkly and I run to it. But I also have to be very careful because their biology is different from ours. So I have to be careful of what my facial expressions. I have to be careful of how I touch them. And I always make sure I ask. But to be quite honest, I really feel the need strongly to touch their skin, to touch their face. So I always ask permission. It's just something I'm very drawn to. I'm not sure why, but I can never meet one of them without doing that. And it's always a very emotional experience because I feel like they are just such beautiful, beautiful beings. If you give me a minute, I'm going to take a moment and see if there's anything else that comes in. The final message they shared with me, or that was shared with me, is I was reminded of the first videos I did where I was communicating with many beings. They presented themselves as a summer triangle, and I would see half circles, like big, like auditorium, but they were standing in a half circle or a crescent shape, and they were lined up, and there were like hundreds of them. And then it wasn't only hundreds of them in that crescent shape, it was hundreds of thousands going back. And what I realized is I wasn't just communicating with one being, one world, I was communicating with many. And then it expanded on that, but I can't get into it. That's a whole other video. But they always stood very far away, and they would always say to me, you must go through this. You must go through this as a world. But we are here for you, and we're supporting you. And so as I was closing out this video, they reminded me of that vision, and then they showed me themselves walking forward. So they are walking forward, and we are definitively walking towards this first contact. It will happen. I don't have exact timing, but I do feel, and I said this in that first video, I am divinely guided, the 3i Atlas, I am divinely guided. I'll put that in the description. That November is going to be a pivotal month. I felt, when I look back, in hindsight's 2020, when I look back at the timeline I was working from, around November, give or take a few months, will be the end of the tribulation period, and so we'll move into something. If we're working from dogma, we'll be moving into that beautiful place, that next phase. Okay? All right. That's it. Thank you.